Those teeth?
Yeah.
Alright, much better. Sorry. Huh? The shoe?
Yeah.
The shoe hurts?
Yeah.
Where? Show me, Augie. Is there something stuck in there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rudy. Foot. Foot. Toe. Rudy and toe. Rudy. Toe. Rudy. Toe. Feet.
Hello. Turn your legs around. Turn your legs around, sweetie. Turn your legs around, sweetie.
Yeah, Mom.
Okay. All right, come on. I can't wait for the school bus to start.
Mom.
And I'll just put you in the taxi in the mornings.
Mom.
Come on. Ready? 2, look. Seatbelt. Wait, 1 second. Sorry, seatbelt stuck back here. Wait, Augie. My name is Nakaya Cherry Chinchilla. I'm a Scorpio. I was born in 1974 in Jamaica, New York. My parents are both from the same small town in Windsor, North Carolina, Bertie County. I went to 2 years of high school there. I went to a Baptist boarding school in Kentucky. I graduated from Bayside in Queens. I went to Dartmouth. I live in Los Angeles, California. I moved here in 2009. I have Graves' disease and hyperthyroidism. I am a black woman and a progressive, like what other stuff you want. I had been working in fashion for a while in New York, and then I moved to California to do something different, and I became a preschool teacher in Berkeley. And while I was living in Berkeley, I went out one night to this place called the Lucky Lounge in Oakland, and that's where I met a guy who didn't drink. I thought it was weird. He had an afro and belt bottoms on, but he doesn't drink, and he was at the bar. Because I was like, who comes to the bar and doesn't drink? And turns out that was Michelangelo Chinchilla, who would go on to, a week later, he would propose, and we would get engaged, and a year later, we would get married from that day. After being married for 5 years, we decided to have a baby. We got pregnant after trying for like 3 weeks. And then 9 months later, Augie was born at NYU Medical Center by C-section. And April 14, 2007, he got 9-9 on his Apgars. After I had Augie, I breastfed him for about 6 months. I was on maternity leave for 5 months. We did things every day. We would go to the Brooklyn Museum and look at the Murakami exhibit that was there. We would go there almost every single day because I was a member. And we just hung out, and he did baby stuff. He met all his milestones. He was a sweet baby. He slept late. He didn't wake up too early. I started using soy formula with him when he was about 6 months. When he was 6 months old, he also got, he had his first seizure. He had his first seizure, and he got really bad eczema. The eczema, the doctors gave me all this stuff, like some steroids, this kind of stuff for his eczema. He got little bumps all over his head. But the Rastas who lived across the street from where I lived, my apartment in Brooklyn, were like, you know, you cut out the soy, the wheat, and the gluten and dairy. And because he had a seizure, and the doctor was like, maybe it wasn't a seizure. I was like, look, kind of like a seizure. So I did that. So we took him to an allergist, and the allergist said he had an allergy to eggs. So that went along with what the Rastas were saying. So for the first, I'd say about 5 years of his life, he didn't have any dairy. He only had one seizure from then to the time until last October. He had one seizure when he was like 6 months old. I took him to the doctor, and the doctor, because he just had this jerky thing, and he was just jerking and wouldn't stop, and then he stopped. The doctor was like, maybe it wasn't a seizure, maybe it was something else. I was like, the baby was just shaking, like it looked like a seizure, but the doctor said maybe it wasn't, that he didn't show any signs that he had a seizure. So from the time I met Mike, he never ran. Like when he tried to run, it would be like super stiff. That was in 2002. As it were on, his what I know now to be chorea was super pronounced, and so he went to the doctor about it because he thought he might have Parkinson's, and they were like, no, you don't have Parkinson's, you have Tourette's. I left his father because Mike, I know now, had been exhibiting serious HD symptoms, but he refused to get help for it, to the point where I was like sending secret notes to his doctor, but he still, because he cut me off from his being able to speak to his physicians because I kept saying that something was wrong and he didn't think anything was wrong. I ended up leaving him and going back to Berkeley, where I first met him, being a preschool teacher again, and I was Augie's preschool teacher. The main reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure Augie was dealing well with us separating and upcoming divorce that we were trying to make happen. And while we were up there, at first he started to have speech difficulties, and I thought the speech was related to like PTSD from a prior incident. But then right after he turned 5, I had taken him to go get his shots at the pediatrician, and he had a trigger thumb. His thumb kept locking it, and I could pop it into place. And I kept doing that. And I asked the doctor about it. She was like, oh, that's normal. I was like, I've never seen anybody with a trigger thumb before. She was like, oh, that's normal. Sometimes it's fine. It'll go away as he gets older. And I was like, okay. But that was the first physical symptom that I noticed. And then we moved back to LA. Things just progressed. He just started to have more speech difficulties. He was in behavioral therapy for about 3 years, once a week. And he just different things were happening. But then after we got back to LA in fall 2012, it was only 5 months later that we found out that Mike had Huntington's disease. Because Mike actually had a psychotic break for Augie's first day of kindergarten, and he went missing. It wasn't until a month later that I found him. And after I found him, he was in a psych ward, and they just said he was psychotic. I was like, how is he psychotic? He had been fine, and all of a sudden all these problems, and now nobody can explain to me what happened. Huntington's disease is a terminal neurodegenerative illness that is genetic, that affects your CAG repeats, and the more CAG repeats, the worse and the earlier Huntington's is. Mike he's right on the borderline. He has 40, and Augie has 82 or 92. I think 82. This is his emergency pack. His emergency pack is made up of the following: a thing for his wheelchair if it gets loose, to screw stuff back on; 2 seizure pins in case he has the seizures; their diazepam; spare feeding kit with syringes; 3 cans of these; sunscreen; earthquake kit. He can survive for like a week with this. So after Mike had been in the hospital a couple times, I finally allowed him to come home, back to my house, my apartment I was living in, even against the best wishes of most of the people I know, because we don't throw people away in my family. I was worried he's going to be eating out of trash cans as some randomly, all of a sudden, schizophrenic, psychotic dude. And one day he just was acting weird, so I took him to UCLA. And when I got to UCLA, that's the first time anyone ever mentioned Huntington's disease. The psych on call in the emergency room was like, we're going to admit him, go home, Google Huntington's disease, see what the symptoms are, and write down all the symptoms that Mike has. And he had every single one of the symptoms, 10 out of the 10. They tested him, because you can only get tested for Huntington's disease if you have like 9 out of 10 of the symptoms in this country. There was some law many, many years ago that made it illegal, because I guess the number 1 cause of death for Huntington's disease is suicide. They tested Mike. It came back in January 2013 that he had Huntington's. And I immediately wanted to test August, but they would refuse because of the ethics of autonomy. Because he's a child, he can't make that decision for himself. And they only do it if you're monitored by speech therapists and occupational therapists and that sort of thing over a period of years. And he had just started OT. So eventually, in August 2014, they took the blood sample for a genetic test. In November 2014, the test came back positive for early onset juvenile Huntington's disease. And basically, he already had it. He wasn't going to get it. He already had it. So Started with the trigger thumb, and then from the trigger thumb, it went on to him just having random behavioral issues, and then it went on to him having his gait changed, and the way he walked changed. He would fall a lot. Eventually to him needing a wheelchair because he falls a lot without it. He can't really get around without it. And he went from basically running to walking to crawling or to moving about in his mobility devices. His speech changed. He went from being able to talk in clear, distinct sentences to not being able to. And I encouraged him to articulate as much as possible, but you could tell with his dysphagia, it's becoming harder and harder for him to speak. And I think if he hadn't been in speech therapy for these many years, it would have definitely been skill he'd already lost. He started having seizures last fall. He had one grand mal seizure and ended up in the hospital where he had 2 more grand mal seizures that night. They put him on seizure medication, but he still has petit mal seizures every day, every other day. They just put him on some new medication last week because he was having them maybe like every 2 to 5 minutes, the petit mal seizures. And now he doesn't have them as often, but he has them a lot. He still has them at least once a day, but not as many throughout the day. The small, tiny seizures, not the big seizures. Whereas adult onset Huntington's, even though it still leads to paraplegia, Mike has chorea, so his arms are always moving. Augie has dystonia and rigidity, so his arms are always stuck in place like that. So it's the opposite ends of the spectrum. That's one of the main differences between the two diseases. Adult onset patients don't have seizures at all. The kids do. Early onset juvenile Huntington's, early onset juvenile Huntington's disease, kids have seizures. Augie's symptoms are more behavioral, whereas Mike's symptoms are more psychological and psychosexual. Augie's too young for the psychosexual symptoms. It presents a lot more in teenagers and adults, which Mike has, his thing is that he masturbates all the time. It exhibits itself in other ways. There are Huntington's disease people who have been known, men who have been known to be aggressive with women or rape women, or there are women who have, like Mike's mom and his sister, who engage in risky sexual behavior and were prostitutes. Like I said, when I met him, he couldn't run. He'd already was exhibiting symptoms, but I didn't know it at the time. And then he became obsessive for a while, but I didn't know that was a symptom. But that was only like a year he was obsessed with something random. And then he started having psychological symptoms as he got later on, before he had a psychotic break where he thought everybody was an alien. And the psychological symptoms, once they presented, they really progressed pretty quickly. And so he had a psychotic break in 2012. Augie likes to dress himself, even though it takes up more time for him to dress himself.
Right.
That's something that he likes to do, so I let him do that. Otherwise, because I could dress him in like a third of the time it takes him to dress himself.
No.
Let me see this sausage. How's the sausage going? Augie, open your mouth.
No.
Open your mouth. Chew it. Birds can have that. I didn't bring you a jacket, but I don't think it's going to get that cold today. And so today and tomorrow they're just working on the play, because the play is on Wednesday, I think. Well, my next steps were to make sure I signed him up for disability. I set him up for an IEP at school. He already had an IEP, but now he had to have an IEP that included his neurology team and all that stuff, because he would need more than the school was providing. He would need a one-to-one aid. He would eventually be in a wheelchair. He would eventually be a paraplegic. He wouldn't be able to speak anymore. So he needs to still be able to access the curriculum at school. So that started that process. Basically, that started the process of becoming a special needs parent and a special needs advocate. I'm a black woman, so I always grew up knowing that I'm supposed to stand up for this because I'm a woman. And I'm supposed to do this and stand up for my rights because I'm black. But it wasn't until Augie got sick. Even with Mike being sick, it hadn't really affected us because Mike was in a nursing home for so long. But when Augie got sick, it really became, and he's a child, so it was like I had to learn all about disability laws. I had to learn about all the different devices and stuff like that. So I really had to basically have an intense education on what it means to be a special needs person while not being a special needs person. So he has me. He has his primary care physician, his pediatrician. He has his neurologist. He has his main neurologist, Dr. Borderon, who is one of the best Huntington's disease neurologists in the country. Every year she gets a fellow, so he gets an HD fellow who sees him as well. He has a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Eric Johnson, who he's been seeing since he was diagnosed when he was 7. Dr. Johnson also sees Mike. Dr. Bordelon also sees Mike. Sometimes we do double appointments for both of them at the same time. Augie has his IEP team. He has a teacher. He has a one-to-one aide, Miss Michelle, who works with him all day long. He has an occupational therapist who he loves. He's had the same one since he was first grade, Miss Patrice. He has a speech therapist. He has an adaptive PE teacher. Those are all his people at school. Outside of that, he has a seizure physician who's also a neurologist, and he has a pediatric gastroenterologist because he has a feeding tube. Well, for a long time I said I wasn't going to get a feeding tube because Mike isn't getting a feeding tube. I thought it would actually make the rest of his body deteriorate quicker. I was grossly misinformed. Early this year, he just started to lose so much weight. If I hadn't gotten him a feeding tube, he wasn't going to make it till the summertime. And I just decided, even though Augie said he didn't want one, but he's fine with it now. He loves to play with it. I realized that it's easier to get a feeding tube. At least he's getting fed. He still has a similar, if not better quality of life, because now we're not fighting about him eating all the time. I still fight with him about eating. Like right now, he's supposed to be eating, but it's not like something that happens at every meal. Augie's on mostly gluten-free, wheat-free, dairy-free, soy-free, ketogenic diet. With all his seizure stuff, we're leaning more towards ketogenic. So he's eating actually a lot more meat. He loves corn dogs, so he's eating a lot more corn dogs than he used to eat. And pork sausage in the morning, because he needs the fat. The ketogenic diet is neuroprotective. And it also is helpful in preventing seizures. So he was already on the ketogenic diet, but now that he has the seizures, it's like a little more intense about the ketogenic diet.
So, we hear that you like Star Wars. Would you like to tell us about Star Wars? Who's your favorite character?
This guy.
Who is that?
I guess in.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Okay, so your mom told us that you love school, but what's your favorite part of school?
Friends.
Into here.
Hey.
Wait. Stop and face.
Friends.
Say it slower.
Friends.
He has a Proloquo app on his iPad that helps him. Is just for that reason. He can click on something and say the word. Like there are pictures of cookies, and he can type in his name and say, August wants a cookie, or I want a cookie, mama, or where are we going, or something like that. It has stuff set up like that. But also, he uses it in school when he does project reports, when he has to do a presentation for his class. And so he does that through his Proloquo app. He tells me what he wants to say, I type it in, and then when he's at his presentation, he'll coordinate the presentation with the different slides he has with the pictures he's put together. So he has to tell his teacher 1, and then he'll press 1, and then it'll say the first thing he wants to say. And then he'll tell the teacher, next slide, please, and then he'll press 2, and the Proloquo will say everything he wants to say. Because he has a lot of things to say, but he doesn't want to waste all his words on the time on something that's not Star Wars related. At school, he gets an hour and a half a week of OT, and an hour a week of PT. He gets an hour every week or every other week of adaptive PE. He gets about an hour and a half every week of speech therapy. Or he gets resource pull-out therapy, tutoring at school. So all those services he gets at school, he goes 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. So they provide the services at school. And once every 6 weeks or so, he gets PT outside of school and OT outside of school. And so that apartment across the street was where we were trying to live, but they didn't want us.
Me.
Yeah, they were mean. They didn't want us to live in their building because liabilities, people are afraid I might sue because they're not as handy accessible as they should be, and they are right. Eat that sausage. You're not getting out of the car till you eat that sausage. always tell people the main symptoms are disobedience. He doesn't like to do anything I ask him to do. And one of those things are eating. So he doesn't always eat like he's supposed to eat. So he was losing a great deal of weight, so I had to give him a feeding tube. So currently he has a feeding tube. Like I said previously, being terminally ill is extremely expensive. When I was taking care of both Mike and August at home, I ran through all of our resources, all of them, all of our savings, and we ended up getting evicted, and we were homeless up until about a month ago. We were chronically homeless for more than 2 years. Like, we would stay someplace for like 4 months. I would get an illegal sublet, hoping that things would work out with a different sublet, but not everybody wants to rent to people with disabilities, even though it's illegal not to, because of liability. The same issues with the school. They were afraid if Augie fell in the building, then I would sue or something like that. It took a long time to be able to find housing. So we lived out of our car for a little while. We basically lived out of the car the whole 2 years. Even except for when we had like places to put our stuff for long periods of time, we basically lived out of the car. We stayed with friends sometimes, but then that was problematic because of Augie's behavioral issues, or if they had kids, they let their kids like watch TV all the time, but Augie can't do that. And it would just create more issues and problems. One of the main things I've found is that people see Augie, see him, and see him laugh and see him happy, and so they don't think he's that sick. That's the main misconception. He's happy, he's doing things, he's up. I'm not crying in a ditch somewhere, he's not crying in a ditch, so he must not be that sick. Maybe he's not even terminal. Maybe he has like 20 more, 30 more years. He'll be fine. I get a lot of that. Then when something happens, like when he got the feeding tube, it was like, he doesn't need a feeding tube. So there's a lot of that. That's like the main misconception, is that people don't know anything about Huntington's disease. I'm making sure I have somebody to talk to about my feelings. I am making sure that I am happy on my own. I'm going to be sad when he passes away. I'm going to be sad. My mother's sick. My father's sick. Sometimes I hang out with Augie, my mom, and my dad, and I think that these are memories that in a few years, I'm not going to be the only person here with all of these memories. All of them are going to be gone. You can't function if you don't prepare yourself for what's going to happen. But you can never prepare yourself for the loss of a loved one. But you have to let yourself know that it's coming. And it's going to hurt. And it's going to feel bad. And you have to let yourself be okay feeling whatever you feel. Just don't let your grief take you to a dark place or anything. But yeah, that's just... I feel like prior to Augie's diagnosis, I was a good mom. I was like an okay regular mom. I did regular mom stuff, but it was like sort of in an abstract way, as most parents are. Like, you love your kid, you do stuff, and this, that, and the other. But when August was diagnosed with Huntington's disease, it changed everything for me. Not just my mindset, everything. The way I approach things changed. It definitely made me a better parent. It made me 1,000 times a better parent than I was before, first of all. It made me more compassionate. I had to let go of my anger against Mike, because before Mike was diagnosed with Huntington's disease, for the year and a half before he was diagnosed, he did a lot of like rude, mean things, called me a lot of names, just very, very angry. And I had to let go of my anger at him. That took a long time because I had been so angry at him, and I had to let it go because none of that was him. And he has dementia, so now he thinks we're just like best friends anyway. But I really had to let it go so I wouldn't be angry at him, but then really let it go so that I could take care of him. Because a lot of people didn't want me to take care of Mike, but I wasn't going to leave my son's father hanging. And my father reminded me of something. He was like, we don't throw people away in this family. So when we were homeless, living on a car, I had to be like evaluated by Department of Mental Health because of the stigma that people are only homeless because they have mental health deficits, which is a lie. People are homeless because they're broke, and pricing for housing through the roof in Los Angeles. And they kept asking me, like, are you depressed? And I was like, no. If anything, I have guilt about not being sadder. That's what I talk about in therapy. It's like, should I be a little bit sadder than this? They would just ask me, well, how are you dealing with this? Like, all this stuff, your son's diagnosis, your husband's diagnosis, like, are you in denial? I was like, no, I'm not in denial. I'm fully aware that they're both going to die. My parents are both sick. So basically, I go through periods of time in terms of what's the order going to be and who's going to die first in the next 2 years. So it goes back and forth between my father, my mother, my son, and my husband. For like a couple of months, I was like in denial. I didn't tell everybody at first until almost like 9 months later that Augie had HD, because I really needed to process it. And basically, it's kind of like a sink or swim. Because guess what? Shit happens. Black people lived through 400 years of slavery. The most I can do is live through this. And so that's what I tell myself all the time. They always ask me, how are you handling? How are you holding up? And I'm just like, either I do what I'm supposed to do or shit falls apart. I got two choices. I can either do it or not do it. That's just it. If I don't get Mike a wheelchair, if I don't get Augie in school, if I can't get Augie a feeding tube, guess what? It ain't gonna happen. He's just gonna die. And I can be sad about it or I can just do it. So that's how I deal. I just do it. It's not like I'm in denial. I fully process my feelings. I know I am sad my son is sick, but my happiness does not live within him. My happiness lives within myself. Like, I know sometimes people get sad and caught up in the sadness of tragedies and death. First of all, death is coming for all of us. Ain't nobody escaping death, so just let it go. People sometimes think, oh, I'm gonna live to be 100. You could get hit by a drone in the yard tomorrow from Amazon. You don't know that. I really just focus on changing the things I can. That's what I focus on at this point in my life. I'm not going to cure Huntington's disease. I can only make him as happy and as comfortable as I can. I can either do that or he won't have that. So I talk to a lot of parents of terminally ill kids and people who have a Huntington's disease and parents who have kids who have Huntington's disease. They don't like to think that death is coming. They like to think that they're all going to be it. Like a miracle is going to come and it's not going to happen. That is a great way to think. It's always good to have hope, but I also think it's always good to prepare for the worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Being sick in America is extremely expensive. Having a terminal illness is extremely expensive. If you don't set yourself up right, you will end up not being able to afford the care. And if you don't learn more about the disease, you're going to end up being frustrated because the person you're taking care of, the main thing about Huntington's disease, whether it's juvenile or the adult, they have a very antagonistic relationship with their main caregiver. I always encourage people, as soon as somebody tests positive, go and find somebody to be your conservator now while you are still lucid. Because once it starts going on, you're not going to want anybody to tell you anything. You're going to think you're fine. You're going to want to make all your decisions, even though you're unable to really think about it in a logical way. But you need to go out and do these things. So I would always encourage adults to get conservatorship. If you are a parent, really talk to your kids about what they want to do. Set them up with Social Security. Set your kid up with an IEP and a 504 plan. You can do both. Those sort of things. To set up your, not just your support network with friends and family and members of your community and your clergy, but also with the structures in place to assist the terminally ill. Huntington's disease is a compassionate care condition. So you can get expedited benefits in this country under Social Security, under SSI, under all these things because of your disease. So yes. Did you feel like you were on Tatooine when we were in Dubai?
Yes.
What animals did we ride when we were in Dubai? We rode a camel. And what other kind of animals?
Red.
And horses. And what else did we do? Remember we were on a four-wheeler? We rode the four-wheeler through the desert?
Yeah.
On the sand dunes? Up and down the sand dunes? That was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your mom is your best friend?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that true, Augie?
Yes.
I think he's just saying that.
No, I like.
You think I'm your best friend?
Yes.
Okay, we're best friends.
Yeah. Great.
Augie, I always say he's the architect of his own destiny. One of the things I find with kids who are sick and terminally ill kids, they get hidden away. Nobody ever sees them because they make people uncomfortable and they make them sad. I can understand that on some levels, but that doesn't help the kids. For me personally, I think it's important to get Augie's story out there. First of all, so that people know that Huntington's disease exists because it's so rare. So that people know that people of color, because Augie's Afro-Hispanic, get Huntington's disease, because I think there's a lot of misdiagnosed or undiagnosed Huntington's disease out there in the Black and Latino communities. But I also just show that, life isn't always about things and control. Augie's life is beyond his control, and it's not about, and he's happy, and it's not about gathering things, it's about living your best life. You only get one life, so cherish it, and live it, and do your best to be happy and to go to the places you want to go and explore the places you want to explore and have the adventure that you want to have, because that's the only life you're going to get. So that's really why I want to share Augie's story, because even with his diagnosis and with his father's diagnosis, he's still a super happy kid. He's happy to be here. He's happy to be alive. He knows he's terminally ill and that his disease is one day going to kill him, but he still wants to go see the Black Panther movies. Doesn't care about that. He still wants to, do all these things. And so even more so urgently, he wants to do them immediately. It's important for me to get his story out there because I want to show people that you can be resilient. I have people sometimes complaining about itsy bitsy things, first of all, that are beyond their control because control is an illusion. Nobody has control over anything. Nobody in the world is going to control anything that anybody does or anybody says or anything's going to happen to them. They just think they are. But we have socialized to believe that we have some control, that if you do this and do this, A and B, C is going to happen. Oh, if I get married and I have kids, oh, this is going to happen. Or if I go to work and I do this, then I'm going to do this and all this kind of stuff. When in reality, none of that might happen. You might get hit by a car tomorrow. I really want to encourage people to sort of let go and to embrace the beauty and the chaos that comes with terminal diagnosis or just with any kind of health diagnosis. If it's something you can beat, try to beat it. If it's something that ain't never been beat before, chances are you're not going to beat it. So you got to come up with another way to win. Look for a way to win. Look for a way. I had to look for a way to win in my personal narrative, in my story. And the way for me to do that, for me to win, is to make sure Mike and Augie have the best possible quality of life I can give them, and that I bring as much joy to their lives as possible. That's how I'm going to win. I know that some people think that because I'm always like, I'm still winning, that I think that an angel's going to come out of the sky and Augie's going to get out of his wheelchair and start walking, and I'm going to be a grandma and have grandbabies. That ain't never going to happen. He's not graduating from college. I'm not having grandkids. But I'm still winning because I found a way to win within my own story. In a way where I can realistically win. I'm not going to win by curing Huntington's disease today or in Augie's lifetime or in my lifetime maybe. They're just working with some mice right now. For me to win, it was set myself a goal that I could reach. And I have set a goal that I could reach. Our goal is a quality of life goal. And a goal is more about joy than about longevity. So I'm still winning, but I'm winning in a way that works for me. And that might not look like winning to somebody else, but it works. Well, who cares about what anybody else thinks anyway? So.